My name is Clint Coons with Anderson Business Advisors, and this video is about where to form your limited liability company for your investment real estate. Now, there's a lot of information out there about which type of LLC you should create and where you should create it when it comes to investment real estate, that is rental real estate. But I'm here to tell you what the truth is, or create myth from reality. And the reason I say this is because there are so many companies out there on the internet that promote Nevada, Delaware, Wyoming for real estate investors, when in reality, those jurisdictions are not necessarily the best jurisdiction for you if you're going to own real estate, for instance, in Illinois or Indiana or Wisconsin. Because when you own property in that state and you set up an LLC, for instance, in Nevada, to take title into a property held in Wisconsin, you can do that. There's nothing in the law that will stop you from owning that property. And so at first, at the outset, you hear the pitchman tell you, here are all the benefits of using Nevada, why you should set one up from a charging order and privacy standpoint. All of that is accurate information. And yes, you can own that Wisconsin property in that Nevada LLC. But if you ever need to evict a tenant, if you're ever sued by a tenant and you want a counterclaim, that's when you're going to find out you made a mistake. That by using that Nevada LLC, you've removed yourself from the ability to prosecute a claim in Wisconsin because your entity isn't registered to do business there. Therefore, you're going to have to take that LLC and register it to do business in Wisconsin, and now you're going to be paying two states for a structure that really only requires you pay one state fee. So when it comes to creating structures for real estate investors to hold their investment real estate, the rule of thumb is always create the LLC in the state where the property is located. We want to have it set up there so that should anything go wrong with that property and you need to, say, evict a tenant, you need to sue someone, that you have legal standing. If you're an out-of-state entity owning property in that state, you do not have legal standing, so you cannot bring the action. The other thing we want to look at is choosing a proper tax structure for that LLC. That is, you want to make sure that you've set up the LLC so that it's a flow-through entity. Because with investment real estate, we want all that income flowing down to us or potential paper losses flowing down onto our 1040. So you need to evaluate which is the best structure from a tax angle for your LLC. One of the things that we do here at Anderson is we look at your personal income tax bracket. We also look at the amount of income you're generating from your real estate. Is it positive or negative? When I use the word negative, I mean from a tax standpoint, not necessarily cash in your pocket, because real estate produces great tax deductions, and so it can offset the income you're deriving from that property. So you need to look at it from that standpoint and determine whether the property is overall positive or negative, and we need to know your individual tax bracket because that's going to influence how you set up your LLC from a tax standpoint. Because choosing, say, disregarded or partnership tax status for an LLC where you're in a high income tax bracket, you could be subjecting yourself to almost 4% more in taxes on that rental income. So you need to evaluate that and understand the nuances of the tax code and how that could come about and affect you. You also want to evaluate whether or not you want to obtain anonymity for that structure. That is, are we just going to create the LLC and we're going to own it individually? I mean, sometimes that makes sense. Many times I recommend you don't want to do that. That is, if you own it in your own name, there's a couple problems that come from that. Number one, the tenants know that it's your LLC and you're the one in charge of it. So if they want to harass you, they'll call you up and harass you individually because they see you as the owner. Another problem with that type of structure is that if I own the LLC and that LLC happens to be located in a state that doesn't offer great charging order protections, meaning that my property's fine, it doesn't create any liability for me, but I get sued individually, then they could take that LLC, take the property that's held inside of it, and now I'm left with nothing. So you need to understand what the charging order protections are in your particular jurisdiction as well to make sure that if you get sued personally, you're not going to lose your LLC that holds your investment real estate. So you're probably getting an idea now that there's a lot of issues that come into choosing the proper structure for investment real estate. And I couldn't even begin to count the number of investors that I've sat down with over the years where they tell me, I wish I had met you 3 years ago, Clint, before I got started with this attorney or with this group off the internet in creating my structure, because now I realize I've gone about and set it up all the wrong way. So what I'm going to do right now is give you a short synopsis of how you should consider creating your structure to A, maximize anonymity, B, minimize taxes, and C, create the overall best asset protection structure for your investment real estate that is flexible enough to change when your investing needs change. So how do we start? Well, typically what I recommend people do is they start with an entity in a jurisdiction that it offers anonymity. And either you have Nevada, Wyoming, or Delaware. That is, your name does not appear on the entity, so no one knows that you have it because you can use a nominee. If you're unfamiliar with this, look at some of my other videos on anonymity planning, nominee LLCs, Nevada or Wyoming LLCs, and I explain it in more detail. But to suffice to say, when you file an LLC, it's either member managed or manager managed. And if it was set up in Wisconsin, you have to list who the members are, who the managers are. And then if it's you, then your information's up there for public inspection. However, when you use Wyoming or Nevada, you can choose to use a nominee manager. So we'll start with this person right here for filing purposes. So this individual's name shows up as attached to the LLC. And then this person will resign their position and turn over control to you. So now you have control of the company. So your information is not associated with the LLC. So if anybody's looking at a public record from a public record standpoint, you do not appear to own this company. Although you do, that's the whole key here in creating this anonymity structure. So let's say we got this Wyoming LLC created for ourselves. We set this up as our initial entity. The other benefit of having this Wyoming LLC is charging order protections. So you have anonymity, and then you have charging order protections. And what that means is that if somebody sues you individually, even if they sued you in Wisconsin because that's where you live, you can have a Wyoming LLC, you're free to own that, and they can't take this LLC interest from you. Because Wyoming does not allow a creditor to take your LLC interest. Okay, the only thing they're entitled to is a charging order, which means that if you decide, again, if you decide to take cash out of your company and pay it to yourself as a distribution, those are key words there. If you decide to take out a distribution, then you have to give it to your creditor. Well, we both know, and this is why LLCs that are set up in these types of jurisdictions never get to the charging order phase, or hardly ever do they ever get to this point, because creditors understand that in the event that they get a charging order, they're never going to get paid because this individual's just going to stop taking distributions. They're not going to move any money out to themselves. All right, so you start with this Wyoming LLC for anonymity for charging order protections. Once that entity is created, then you will go up here and you'll create your LLC, in my example, Wisconsin. So this is going to be my Wisconsin LLC. And when I create it, I make sure that it points back to this LLC. So if somebody were to look at this limited liability company and want to determine who owns it, who's involved with it, what that LLC will do is it'll point them to this LLC here. And then if they look at this LLC, it's going to point them to this person over here who's no longer associated with it. So no one will know that you're involved in this structure whatsoever. I have so many clients that have created a structure like this, and when they deal with their tenants, let's say you have several Wisconsin LLCs that you've set up because that's where you live, all right? And this can be any state. You got several Wisconsin LLCs like this, and you're managing your properties. You're going out there and dealing with the tenants. It's great to hear this from my clients. When they walk out to the properties, they let these tenants know, I don't own them. I'm just the manager. I represent the owner of the property. So when people get upset, they tend to get upset with the owner, not necessarily the manager. We don't want those tenants knowing who owns the property. And when you have a complete anonymity package like this, where you're starting with this Wyoming LLC and then building up and having all these companies point back to here, you're able to achieve that so no one knows who's involved. Now, from a tax standpoint, for investment real estate, all these LLCs up here would be disregarded. They don't have to file any tax returns, so all the income flows down to here for tax reporting purposes. And then this LLC here is going to choose a tax status that is that is dependent upon your personal income tax bracket, what we're trying to achieve from a personal income tax standpoint. And so this entity here may or may not have to file a tax return depending on what we're looking at when we're creating the structure. And so what we've done here is we've ensured that if anything goes wrong, the LLCs are located in the state where the property is located, so you can file an action to evict the tenant. So if anything happens with the properties, we have protection. We can continue to run our business. If anything happens with us individually, our properties, our LLCs, everything that we've set up, they're protected from our personal creditors. And then we've made the proper tax election and minimized our overall tax reporting for all these entities because, as you see here, I have 4 LLCs. And potentially, the most I would ever have to file for this structure is 1 tax return if you set it up the right way. So at Anderson, what we focus on is creating structures for real estate investors that minimize their taxes and to minimize their ongoing expenses as well, provides anonymity and provides both forms of protection for their overall structure. That is inside protection, so if something happens with the property, you're protected, and outside protection. If something happens with you because you've been involved in an accident or maybe your child's done something wrong or you default on a loan where you've given a personal guarantee or a lease, that if they come after you, your assets are not going to be exposed to your creditor. My name is Clint Coons with Anderson Business Advisors, and this video was about how to structure your real estate investing.